I have some fun things to share with you all today about a little solo pilgrimage I took yesterday. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to grab a pillow. Okay. Hey, Bethany, welcome. Glad you found it. So we'll start in a couple minutes. As I was sharing, I somehow managed to erase the original live link for this. I just recreated another one, so I'm so glad you all are finding it. Yay! And I'm tuning in live from Chartres, France, from the cathedral here, where we're going to begin Madonna Rising, really beautiful week-long ceremony starting on the 13th. So here a couple days early to get settled. And it is warm, just like it's warm everywhere, but quite lovely. It's definitely starting to cool down. So we'll just start in a minute. For those of you that are live right now, I'd love if you want to post, how are you feeling about this coming new moon? So the new moon is on the 12th and it's in Leo, and we have got a eclipse happening, which always creates big openings. So how are you feeling about the coming new moon? I know I'm feeling excited because I finally got into the book I'm working on. New moon in Leo energy book is happening. Yeah, it's interesting. The whole building just started shaking here, but I do not think it's an earthquake. Something else. Yeah, Leia, big yay for the book. I wrote on the train. So excited. Celeste, optimistic. It's been a long road. Yeah. Good. And Bethany, tired, but excited and hopeful. Good. I love that. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our new moon talk through Center for Creative Intent / Ash and Rose Spiritual Collective. I'm tuning in live from France. I just got here a couple hours ago, settling in, and our new moon, I always like to do the new moon talks before the new moon so we can use it as a way to start gathering our energy and our intent, so that on August 12th, when the new moon is, that you have a focus and clarity and can do a ceremony to plant a seed of what you want for this new moon cycle. This month's new moon is in Leo, so we're moving into fiery energy, and there's also an eclipse, and so I've just been reading some things and talking to astrologers around this is a big time to really put energy into things that you've wanted to start, that there'll be a lot of fire available, and also fire to move things that have perhaps been stuck. So I am definitely feeling that. I am working on a book that I started in January, and it is now August, and I feel like, I've been working on it on and off, and I feel like now, okay, I'm clear. I'm ready to go. Bring on the fire of Leo to help it move. Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that very much because I often miss it if I don't plan ahead, since Bethany. Yeah, I like the idea of us gathering before the new moon, getting clear, exactly, doing our prayers together, and then being more clear then about what we want to do for ourselves or for the collective. So our talk today is around how to stay steady in big change, how to root in. And I want to share a couple stories around staying rooted and how we build our steadiness, because it really is a building. It's a maintenance, something that we do over time, like brushing our teeth or washing dishes or washing our hair. So, getting more steady is partially around our intent, and then looking at how what supports us in creating more steadiness and what takes us away from that feeling sense of steadiness. So, one of the things I noticed recently, and I have a new tool, I'm so excited, is that one of the things that was making me unsteady was that I was just kept getting hooked by social media and looking at what was happening and then going down rabbit holes and thinking that I was doing research around something and then not ending up doing, starting in that research loop and then getting waylaid. And I kept berating myself of like, come on, stop doing this. And then I talked with Serena about it, and Serena said, oh, I've got like 3 apps that I use to help me with that. And so I downloaded a couple of them. I've been using one of them, and it's just been a game changer. And it's so simple. And it has absolutely helped me get more steady. Instead of thinking, I'm going to use my will to get more steady, I'm going to use I should be focused to be able to stay steady. I finally realized I just need more support to stay steady. And so this app has a little reminder. Hi, we're going to open the app in 5 seconds. We're going to open Instagram, or we're opening Facebook or WhatsApp in 5 seconds. So take a breath. And so I take a breath. And sometimes I realize I actually don't want to go into social media, and I go off. And sometimes I'm posting something. And this is also what's happening. I'm posting something and then I get hooked. So I can't not cut out social media because I want to communicate and share. So 5-second breather. I get steady then. In that 5 seconds, I check in. What am I doing here? What's my focus? And then, boom, I am released into that one app, whatever the app is that I picked. And I've got 10 minutes. And usually I'm done in 2 to 5. And then you get a little bonus when you do that. And there's also been times that I've gotten lost and it just shuts down. Yay! And then I stop and I check in. What happened? How did I get lost? Where did I go in? And so the reminder as we enter this new moon that we're going to have more access to our will and to our capacity to focus and stay steady on things, just in general, and use that extra energy to create support systems that are going to last longer. Mm-hmm. So instead of willing your way through things to try and stay steady, I'm going to just even repeat it because it's so important. Use the energy of this time to take a step back and say, what's a structure that will hold me steady in the long run? Because you're not always going to have access to your will and to that, I'm going to stay focused. You're not going to feel well. You're going to not have sleep. You're going to be emotionally disturbed and just want to check out. Right? And so when we understand that our energy, our emotions, what we're processing in our life, and what's happening in the world, our health, the amount of sleep we've gotten, all of these things fluctuated. There is probably never going to be a time that everything is steady outside of us, maybe for moments at a time. And then something's going to arise in the world, or in your family, or with your health, or fill in the blank with your dog needing to go to the vet, like fill in the blank. Something's going to get wobbly. And that's actually life. We're not trying to make life steady. Life is going to life. Life is going to do what it's going to do. People are going to do what they're going to do. We can like it or not like it, but life's. And it's messy and unpredictable and changes constantly. And our bodies are also changing constantly. The way we're interacting. Steadiness, I like to think of that the line of this earthly plane is very unpredictable. And this line to spirit and to connecting to the earth, to rooting into the earth and connecting to the sky can stay steady. My own connection, my own centering and coming back to myself, to this moment, to this time, in relationship with life, that can get steady. And that's the practice. Coming back to ourselves over and over again. I was sharing with the group yesterday that there's a way that we've all been taught. And I think part of it's through school, the way we're schooled and just the linear thinking that we're raised in, is that idea of steadiness or anything really is that it'll do this. Like our spiritual path will be a line going upward. Our health should be a line going upward. This sense of steadiness should be a line that's going upward, that is constantly improving. And that we're going to get someplace and then it's going to get steadier and steadier. But we need to change that into a circle where we're at the center and we're webbed and connected to all of our friends and beloveds and family and the world and our communities and all these different ways, nature, plants, animals. And that we're coming back to our center. And so we stretch a little bit and then we come back. We stretch and then we come back. And so the circle is how we're supporting ourselves. And truly how we're supporting ourselves spiritually. How are we supporting ourselves spiritually? Something just flipped. And so what is happening? No, it looks like it's still live. Okay. So that expansion then is from the line, there's where the line gets to be, earth to sky, that we're the bridge, and that the steadiness comes from rooting ourselves in the earth and from opening to communicate with the divine in whatever form that arises, that we relate to the divine. So, and we want to keep coming home to our heart, to our intuition, to our conversations with something that's greater than us, whether that's our ancestors, a manifestation or a image of the divine that resonates with you, that there's a conversation that's happening. Yeah, trees, exactly. And that conversation helps us stay steady. Structure, circle, coming back to our center over and over again. Expand, come back to center. Contract, come back to center. And ongoing conversations with the divine. Being on a spiritual path that we're crafting for ourselves that helps remind us come back into relationship with spirit. Come back into relationship with the invisible world. Don't get hooked by the manifestation and forget about the soul, the spirit. Manifestation is great. Celebrate manifestations. Celebrate nature. Celebrate your body. Celebrate the things that you love. And come back to your own core over and over again. Yay. One of the ways that we can or several ways that we can connect to that steadiness is through more pauses and more stillness, more space in our lives, and more prayer. So the stillness creates space for us to, one, see what's going on, what's actually going on for us rather than our head just running. So dropping into the body. It also opens the portal for information to come in, for us to get receptive, which helps us get more steady, and for that information from the divine to come in, from those knowings, that what we call silent knowledge in the Toltec work, to come in. So this idea of being a vessel. And another piece of this, so stillness, to help us create more steadiness, is also prayer. And prayer as a conversation, which is what we always talk about here. Prayer as a conversation. And it might be a conversation with yourself, with your highest self, with your wise self. It might be a conversation with the wind. Build intimacy as one of your petals of the flower of steadiness. That the steadiness is the stalk and the roots, and that the petals are what help support and bring in beauty and light and creativity as well. So today in a little bit, we'll do a meditation to help us to anchor into this idea of and feeling sense of steadiness. And I want to share a story first before we go into our ceremony. So I've never felt a really big pull to Mary Magdalene. There's a lot of writing about her and a lot of energy, and I always have just honored, not necessarily like, yes, love her as a historical figure, love the writings around her. I don't feel a huge pull. But I've been coming to southern France now for 5 or 6 years. And I realized a couple of years ago that her grotto is less than a couple hours from my friend's house in Grasse that I come to every year. And so Saturday at 4 a.m., I took my friend McKenna to the airport, and then I went on a little adventure. And the adventure was to drive to St. Baume, to Mary Magdalene's grotto, which is what is believed is the last place she lived, and that she lived there for a number of years and meditated and did her work there. So I love that. It's a hike through a forest to get up to this. So visualize, and maybe you've seen it on my social media. I've been sharing in my stories, but imagine this really beautiful forest, and then up high, this rock wall that is 12 miles long. I don't know how high it is, but it's gray rock, and there's caves apparently throughout this entire, like miles of caves in this whole area. And so it's an hour-long hike up through the forest to get up to her grotto. And oh my God, it was so amazing. So the hike was gorgeous. And then there's this big grotto that they put a wall in, and there's a door. The door was open because it was open, but you go in and it's 2 levels, and there's a spring on both levels. So there's a pool of clear water on the upper level and the lower level. And in that water, so crystal clear, it's all limestone, going through limestone. So it's that kind of travertine, soft blue yumminess. There are these little drips from the rock, and that's what's feeding there's obviously water coming through the rock that's dripping into the pool. That's what keeps it full. And so completely still water, silent. I was in there for a little bit by myself. Nobody else was there. And then this drip, boom, hits the water, and then it ripples out, and then it goes still again. And then you wait. and then there's a drip, and it ripples out, and then it goes style again. Yeah, it's remarkable. It was just so beautiful to be there, to get to sit in that space and meditate and listen and do ceremony. So I was blessed to get to be there on my own. And one of the things that I always do when I travel, I know, oh, so good, is when I go to sacred sites, I collect water if I can, and I also try and get a candle. So you guys are the first that are, you all are the first that are getting to share this with me. So here's the candle. Isn't that beautiful? And here's the water. So I finished the water that I was drinking, and I filled it up with water from the spring. And then this is important. If you collect sacred water or water, just any water, label it so it says Magdalene. It has an X on the top because, and I made it circle because I almost drank this a couple times, and I've learned the hard way that if you put it sacred water in a regular bottle, it's way too easy to forget when you've got other bottles around. So Magdalene water, yay! So we're going to use this in our ceremony today, and the candle as well. And that's something that I've been thinking about, is learning to stay steady in extreme situations. You can't expect yourself to be rooted and steady when an extreme situation arises if you haven't been practicing. So historically, it's been written down, and Mary Magdalene's been written out of so many things, and been reading the Gospels of Mary, which is, they believe, is probably her writing, but it also talks about her intimate knowledge of some of the teachings that the other apostles didn't get. And that historically, Mary Magdalene was the first one to see Christ after he came out from the tomb. So after he arose, she was the first one to meet him, and that there was an exchange of teachings at that point, at that time. And why I bring this up is, imagine. So I'm not Christian. I'm honor Christianity at the core. I think it's been very dogmatized and patriarchalized. There's a new word. And there's a lot of nonsense in it. And at the core, it is rooted in shamanism, like all major religions are. And that there's also wisdom that comes through. We sometimes have to really look for it. So I've been looking, I've been exploring a little bit, doing a little bit of tiny bit of research. And here's what I think is fascinating for this idea of steadiness. Imagine that story that so many of us know. Yeah, exactly. Rooted in mysticism as well. Thanks, Celeste. That so many of us, that we all know, right? Of Christ being crucified, brought down from the cross, put in a tomb, and resurrecting. And this is an ancient story. Horus and Osiris and Isis, so baby Horus. And if you look at old Egyptian images of Isis holding Horus, damn, it's the exact same thing. It's the exact same image that we see with Mary and Christ. And there's also this resurrection, 3-day resurrection, which happens in many, many different religions and spiritual traditions. So imagine the spiritual practice, and we're just going to work with Mary Magdalene right now, that Mary Magdalene must have had in order to stay steady through the crucifixion of Christ and then be waiting for him when he came. So the story is that she anointed his body, and that she also anointed him when he came back out of the tomb. And you'll see in the images of her that she's carrying an alabaster jar. That's an anointing jar. And that she was probably very versed in the arts of death, of midwifing death. So that's what I've been pondering, is how does one stay steady in horrible situations and circumstances personally? And again, it takes practice. And as we practice that in our own lives, it helps us stay steady in the collapse that we're seeing around us in relationship to the wildfires and the wars and the sexual abuse and child trafficking and all the things that we're being impacted by and are such a difficult part of being human, that there are so many natural disasters, human-made disasters, and harm that humans are perpetuating on each other. What steadiness allows us to do, it's not about going numb, it's not about ignoring. There's a way that as we get steady, we're able to hold more complexity in the world and digest it so that we become more simple. So let me explain what I mean by this. There's a lot of complex things that we're all navigating. So, example, plastic bottle. We know what plastic's doing to the environment. And I do my best to not use plastic bottles, and I still use them sometimes. Even this candle, plastic. So that is a contradiction, and it creates a level of complexity because it creates a what's the right word? Dissonance in our being. Because our values, probably everyone on this call, listening, watching the recording, has a value around wanting to take care of the earth. And yet, just by driving our cars, drinking bottled water, fill in the blank, using any water at all, we're creating harm to the earth. And it's the same thing with everything. There's no way to avoid harm. And there's places where that then feels very complex because we see how interwoven things are and how difficult it is and actually impossible to not create harm. So the steadiness is doing our best, understanding it's complex, and it doesn't take us off the hook for anything, and allowing ourselves to be stretched by my values are this. I want the world to be this way. I wish more humans were like this. I wish I was more like this, with what's actually true, which is that we're going to create harm. There is really literally no way around it. So increasing our mindfulness, the simplicity is as we stretch to hold rather than avoiding or judging or putting it out, making other people wrong, to hold both the beauty and the harm, to hold our intent and the places we fall short of our intent. And the simplicity is when we start to really land more in our hearts and bring love, bring our commitment, bring our steadiness, bring our awareness. And so that's where it starts to become simple. The mind is going to try and make it more complicated and bring in judgment and blame and shame and projection onto others and hopelessness. The metabolizing of it is being able to hold all of that without letting our mind take us down that track too far. But say, come back, mind. Let's go into our heart. What's true? What's true? What's our intent? What can we do to stay steady? Practice, practice, practice. Find more support. Do our best every day. And keep expanding, keep going back to our center, to expand into our values more and more, to live from our values more and more, and to make note when we're not and see what we can adjust. So I like to think of Mary Magdalene and to feel Mary Magdalene as a really beautiful role model for us, and also seed, because they have tried to bury her in multiple ways throughout the entire history of Christianity and before, right? And have tried to minimize, reject. And I love the proverb. It's a Mexican proverb. They tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. And I feel like Mary Magdalene was a seed that they tried to bury. And now this incredible flower is blossoming as more scripts and texts come out, as they have found the, my brain just fried, the gospel, the new gospels that they found and that are now being translated, and that there's a wave now of people, especially women, finding Mary Magdalene in really surprising ways. And so she is now blossoming and reminding us how to blossom by staying steady. And I think also one of the hallmarks of that I've been thinking about too with Mary Magdalene is that she didn't want to be known. She didn't want to be seen as the way. She was in service to the divine. And so that lends to a level of steadiness when you're not trying to be something or prove something or be the spokesperson for something. You just are. And that is steady. That steadiness of just being exactly who you are allows deep rootedness and presence. Okay, so that's one story. And then the second story, I'm writing about this right now. So if you're, yeah, it's remarkable. It's been so fun to read about her. I'm a little slow. So the second story I'm writing about right now for the new book, which is called Fire Witch. And it's hopefully coming out October 2027. We have until the end of December to write it, which means the end of August or September to finish it. So, woohoo. But the other story is around a similar type of steadiness in hard times. And I'm going to shorten this, but one of my first teachers, Caradwin Falling Star, and some of you have heard this story and some of you might be new, and I'm just going to do a teeny part of the story. Is a really amazing mystic and has always remembered her past lives. And she wrote a book called Heart of the Fire, which is about a past life in Scotland. And the ending of that particular book, spoiler alert, I'm about to spoil the ending. The ending of that particular book, from the memory that she had, is of being killed during the burning times. And she went back in, she did a bunch of work on herself, a bunch of healing work on herself, got more steady in her present life, and then went back and visioned possibility. And what she found was that instead of going into panic when she found out that her best friend had been caught by the witch hunters, she got quiet. And I think for all of us, this is a fork in the road that we need to build the muscle around more and more. And the fork in the road is something intense happens and we follow our mind and go into the story and the fear and the disaster mind in worst case scenario. So, I'm not talking about trauma. That's a whole different thing. I'm talking about the mind. Trauma needs a different thing. It's a nervous system. So we need to care for that. So the difference between the mind going down a pathway that's not helpful, that's creating fear and doesn't allow us to actually be in the present and listen, and the pathway of refrain, listening, going into stillness, rooting in, and then asking what's needed here. So in this second storyline, Caradwin stopped and rooted in and was able to stay with her friend psychically. She wasn't physically with her, but psychically stay with her friend as her friend was being tortured and killed, and stay completely present and love her all the way through and basically hold her hand energetically. It's such an incredible piece of writing. And then when her friend gets killed, then she comes back to herself. Okay, so she's been out, she comes back to herself, and she reroots and regrounds into the earth, and she says, where do I go next? What's next? Steady. What's next? Quiet. What's next? And like that still pond, waiting, still pond, waiting. And then the drop from the divine came, which was follow the golden thread. That was the message. And I can imagine it rippling out in her being. And she looked around and she opened and she saw this little golden thread psychically, okay, in her mind's eye. So she energetically saw this golden thread, which she followed, and she survived. There's so much in this story. It's a practice of getting rooted and getting quiet and going back to, just like in the grotto of Mary Magdalene, these still ponds, empty, wait, hold, and the answer will drip. Boop, one drop. And if you're present, then you know what the next step is. It may take time to get there. Okay. But that's what we want to cultivate. I'm really excited. Leah and I'm going to turn on some lights because it's getting dark here. Leah and I are hosting a silent retreat next month. It was Leah's idea from her doing that work with groups of women. And we're doing the first one up at the Land, where 4 of us are going to go into silence for 4 days together. So we're going to meal prep and figure everything out beforehand. We're going to go in and meditate and do meals in silence and do art together and have our own space. And just think the world needs more of that. And so just being connected to people. So it's really difficult for most of us to get enough time to do an extended silence. And being around people, connecting with people, just even like on these calls that have done work like this, that do have the space to do silence. Not everybody needs to. Not everybody needs to do this work. And there's someone in the community that needs to be doing the work, because then it radiates out to everybody else in the community. So thanks, Leah. I'm very excited. And it will impact our community in a really beautiful way. All right, questions or shares before we step into ceremony together? Any questions or shares? Same here. Look at, I'm going to bring you out the window again. It's starting to get quiet here. Look at that beautiful, oh my God, that color. It's my little French village. So if you want to be on the journey with me, go follow me on Instagram or Facebook, my personal account I'm sharing. Aw. Okay. Yeah, I think, let's try and invite to stream. Should we try an experiment? I don't know if you want to share, Bethany. I'm not sure how this will work. But if you want to try sharing with your voice, not with your video, with your voice, and you can do your video, of course, too, I can see if I can invite you in. You're welcome, Celeste. It was so fun to get to share just what I'm up to. And Bethany, also, I want to hear. So send me a voice message or something. How's that? Okay, so let's light a candle. So if you have a candle that you want to light, or you can use your imagination, I am not going to light this candle, so I'm saving it for a ceremony with our group here. But we're going to imagine that we're lighting this candle using our imagination. Good. So if you want to light your candle and hold it in both your hands, whether it's a physical candle or an imaginary candle, imagine that you're holding a candle that you have lit and that you can see the flame. Great. Thanks, Bethany. And feel how the wick is steady. The flame is moving all over the place and affected by the winds and can go out with water, but the wick is steady. So feel yourself as this wick, the steady wick. And imagine that fire in your heart, that wick goes down into the earth and that you're going to light a fire in your heart and connect it to this candle. Our prayer together today is that we may continue to light and relight that flame in our heart and make our wick more steady, more connected, deeper, more solid, so the fire can be even more solid and shine out to others. Beautiful. So holding your candle, and if you want to put it down and just put your hands on your heart and just breathe, and let's just take a couple minutes to just be in silence with each other and breathe into our hearts, breathing into that inner fire and just feeling the steadiness. What will help you create that steadiness inside of you as we come into stillness together, soften, settle, steady. Just sit in silence for a couple minutes. Beautiful. Taking another 30 seconds. Finding that sense of steadiness in your being, connecting to earth. Finding that inner wick And feeling the flame in your heart radiating out. Beautiful. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. And then if you have a bowl, and water, we're gonna do the water part of our ceremony. And I'm gonna use a little bit of this Magdalene water. Pour it into the bowl. So again, you can either do this physically or do it later, or virtually, so using your imagination. So imagine that you're holding a bowl, or physically hold your bowl and put water in it. And then what's your prayer for yourself for this moon cycle? And pray that into the water, your prayer for yourself or your prayer for others. But always start with any prayers you have for yourself or any intent that you want to set. What's the seed that you want to plant? What do you want to light for this Leo new moon? It is so special. It came out of a spring coming out of the mountain. This water, it's so cool. And we're all going to connect. So you can put your prayers into your water and just know that we're also collecting all of our prayers into this water. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do with it later. So feel first your prayers for yourself. What seed are you planting? What are you lighting for this next Leo new moon? Where do you want to put your energy? What's your focus? So gather your intent. Beautiful. And now putting your prayers into the bowl when you feel ready. Putting your prayers into the bowl for the world. So what do you want to pray into this water? What do you want to bless? What do you want to honor? Connecting to your heart and imagine that light of your compassion, of your presence, of your willingness to stay steady in the face of hard things. Say your prayers and your blessings into the water. Beautiful. And go ahead and share a couple words of what you're praying for yourself, what you're planting and putting into this water, or for the world. So a couple words to just share, to mix, and we'll imagine again that we're placing all of them in this bowl of water. I go ahead and put mine down so I can type. Mm. Beautiful. Bethany shared balance. My words for myself right now, flow and presence. And I'm just praying for ease for the people that are being impacted by the wildfires, and just so many prayers for the animals and trees. Good. Anybody else want to share? Hmm. Leah, ease of suffering for those lacking shelter, food, and safety. Yeah. And Bethany, protection. Beautiful. Celeste, praying for igniting more vitality, energy in my life. And pray for all the trafficked children, for the ICE detention centers, and for Mother Earth to keep strong with the impacts of life. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. So these are all of our prayers. And those of you that might be watching the recording later, put your prayers in this bowl of water. So you can see this little bowl of water with our Mary Magdalene spring water in it, from St. Balm. And we're going to hold that water has vibration, and when we put our prayers and energy into it, that increases the vibration. What I'm going to do with this water now is, on the new moon, I'll walk down. There's a river that runs through town, and I'll walk down there and do a little blessing with the mama tree that's down there. We've been doing a lot of ceremony with her over the years, and then I'll pour it into the river, knowing that that's going to take it down to bless more people. So that's what this water is going to do. And your prayers will be in it. Beautiful. So remember to set an alarm for yourself if you need to, and set time aside to do your ceremony. And the new moon is at 11:37. It's probably Mountain Time, or maybe Pacific. Anyway, check what time it is for you. So it's more morning-ish, late morning in the States. And set an alarm for yourself, or set aside time, put time in your calendar to do some sort of ceremony for yourself. You can do this exact ceremony of candle, create steadiness, imagine tending to that flame of your heart, get water, put it in a bowl, put your prayers. You can do anything for the new moon. Bethany, yeah, and constant hope, because I know it's a frequent battle not to get discouraged. Yes, it really is. It really is. And that's where, just coming back to our heart. And I will often remind myself, when I start feeling discouraged, of what else we've gone through as humans, and that there's always been big earth changes, that we've navigated world wars and plagues and all sorts of things. And it's easy to think, oh, well, there hasn't been anything like this, but most likely there has been somewhere. Yes, it is true that things are heating up, and there's always been wildfires. There's always been earthquakes. There will always be. And we need humans, and this is the other thing I remind myself and will remind you, we need humans that are steady, so that as big things change, there's rooted presence available in the field. Because most people don't have the skill set to stay steady. And having people, more and more people in the world who are able to, and again, not as a form of spiritual bypass, but as a form of, I will be present and witness if needed. Really beautiful movie to watch if you haven't seen it yet. It's beautiful and it's hard to watch, and there's a great funny part at the very end. But it's called Don't Look Up. Pretty sure that's what it's called. Great movie about this. You'll see what I mean if you haven't seen it before. Go watch it. All right, sweet ones. Thanks so much for joining me today and for supporting Ash and Rose Spiritual Collective as we find our footing. I've had a big vision drop in over the last couple of days that I'm really excited about. So I'm going to do my best to write it out and start to contact people about it. But just know there's magic stirring in lots of beautiful ways. Bethany, I didn't want to watch it, but I couldn't stop. I know, I felt the same way. And then the last scene is just so precious, and that's steady. That's being steady, and that's what's needed now, I believe. All right. Much love to each of you. I am heading to bed. Let's do a quick check on our view. Look at that sky, people. Much love from France. And next event that I'm doing is August 24th for our monthly prayer circle. Bye, sweets.